Have you ever wondered what Harry, Hermione, and the rest of the Hogwarts crew really looked like in the books? The movie versions left out some surprising details, from Harry's green eyes to Hermione's famously bushy hair. In this video, we will explore the book-accurate appearances of every major character. Starting with the main character, Harry Potter, who was portrayed by Daniel Radcliffe, and many fans agree he was a great choice. However, one important detail was missing: his eyes. In the books, Harry is described as having a round face and striking green eyes just like his mother. Unfortunately, Daniel had an allergic reaction to colored contact lenses, so the filmmakers had to leave out this key feature. While Emma Watson did capture Hermione's exceptionally intelligent and level-headed personality, her appearance in the films was a bit different from how she's described in the books. In the books, Hermione is portrayed as a girl with bushy, brown, untamable hair, large front teeth, and brown eyes. Her hair looked fairly accurate in the first few movies, but her noticeably large teeth were never shown on screen. Out of the trio, Ron Weasley is probably the least accurate when compared to his book description. In the books, Ron is described as a tall, lanky boy with bright red hair, freckles, blue eyes, and a long nose, while Rupert Grint did have some of those features like his red hair, but the movies failed to show one of his most recognizable traits: his freckled skin. With the Golden Trio covered, let's move on to some of the professors at Hogwarts. While the movies did a great job bringing characters like Snape and Dumbledore to life, others like Professor Umbridge and Mad-Eye Moody weren't exactly book accurate. That's partly because their book descriptions were so exaggerated, even bordering on cartoonish or animal-like at times. Let's start with Professor Umbridge. While Umbridge is probably the most hated character in the entire series, her book version might have made her even scarier. In the book, she's described as a short, stout woman with a pale, toad-like face, a wide mouth, and a very flabby appearance, which obviously couldn't be fully depicted in the movie. Another professor who is hard to depict accurately due to his over-the-top description is Mad-Eye Moody. In the books, he's described as a heavily scarred, burly man, with a face that looked like it had been roughly carved from wood. In the books, it's mentioned that he had deep scars all over his face and a chunk missing from his nose. Trying to depict that realistically would have been nearly impossible, especially since the films were primarily aimed at a younger audience. While Snape was depicted almost perfectly in the films as a thin man with a large hooked nose, sallow skin, and shoulder-length greasy black hair, one key detail was left out: his teeth. In the book, Severus Snape is described as having yellow, uneven teeth, which added to his intimidating and somewhat unsettling presence. While Professor Slughorn did match a few details from the books, some major ones were skipped over. In the books, he's described as a very fat man with a large belly, but the most important detail that was missing in the films was his distinctive walrus-like mustache. Another professor the movies portrayed quite well is Remus Lupin. In the books, he's described as a man in his mid-30s with a young face that often looks tired and pale, with lines of worry etched into it. The films did a fairly good job capturing his appearance thanks to strong acting and subtle visual storytelling that conveyed his worn, gentle nature. Since we're already talking about Remus Lupin, one of the members of the infamous Marauders, let's take a look at the rest of the crew. Sirius Black was described as a handsome man with long, black, sometimes messy hair and striking gray eyes. While the movies showed him as older and worn down from Azkaban, they never really captured his younger days. Similarly, Harry's father, James Potter, didn't get much screen time as his younger self in the movies. In the books, he's described as having tousled black hair, hazel eyes, a strong jawline, and wearing glasses, and he looked a lot like Harry. That detail was emphasized in the books, but the films only touched on it briefly. The final member of the Marauders, Peter Pettigrew, was generally considered book accurate in terms of his physical appearance. In the books, he's described as a small rat-like man with grubby skin, small watery eyes, and a pointed nose. Now, let's move on to some of the other students at Hogwarts. Ginny Weasley is described in the books as a girl with the trademark Weasley red hair and a freckled complexion. In the movies, Ginny did have red hair, but just like Ron, the films skipped over her freckled skin. Neville Longbottom was described as a short, plump, and round-faced boy with buck teeth and blonde hair. The movies actually did a great job depicting him in the earlier films. The actor wore false teeth, plastic behind his ears, cheek padding, and even a fat suit to make him look more book accurate. Another character that most fans agree was depicted perfectly is Luna Lovegood. In the books, she's described as a girl with long, straggly, dirty blonde hair, pale eyebrows, and protuberant silvery eyes. Draco Malfoy is another character who somewhat matches his book description. He is described as a slender, pale boy with sleek white blonde hair, cold gray eyes, and a pointed face. Now, let's move on to some of the more evil characters in the series. The Dementors are some of the most scary and haunting creatures in the series. In the Harry Potter books, Dementors are described as tall, humanoid figures, roughly 10 to 12 feet tall, cloaked in tattered black robes and hoods that make them look like wraiths. Their skin is gray, slimy, and decaying like a decomposing corpse. They have gaping, shapeless holes for mouths and empty, decaying eye sockets hidden beneath their hoods. The movies did a fairly good job depicting their appearance. However, while the films showed Dementors more like cloaked skeletons, many fans believe they should have looked more like zombies in cloaks instead. One of the evil characters who became a fan favorite is Bellatrix Lestrange. Thanks to Helena Bonham Carter's excellent performance, she is regarded as one of the best characters in the movies and very book accurate. In the books, Bellatrix is described as a tall woman with long, thick, shining black hair. She has thin lips, dark, heavy-lidded eyes, and a strong jaw, so it's safe to say the movies were fairly accurate with that description. Now let's talk about the Dark Lord himself, Voldemort. In the books, he's described as having pale skin, a chalk-white skull-like face, snake-like slits for nostrils, red eyes with cat-like pupils, a skeletally thin body, and long, thin hands with unnaturally long fingers. While the movies did a pretty good job bringing this terrifying look to life. One noticeable difference was his eyes. In the books, Voldemort has red, cat-like eyes, but the filmmakers chose to give him more human-like ones. They were concerned that red eyes would make it harder for the actor to convey emotion and might be too distracting for viewers. Instead, they planned to give him a more snake-like mouth to make him look even scarier, but they ultimately decided against it, fearing it could be too traumatizing for younger audiences. So that was our take on what Harry Potter characters really looked like in the books. Let us know your favorite character in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more Harry Potter content.